Shalom, everybody. Today I want to talk about 6 signs that reveal that we are back in the 1930s. It's pretty scary. When I started the research in 2000 for my first book on anti-Semitism, I identified some troubling trends in the new anti-Semitism that were slowly becoming a reality. Most people look at me funny when I claim that that what I was observing appeared to be some kind of an ominous return to the 30s and the 40s in Europe for the Jews. I was even called a conspiracy theorist. But friends, it's only a conspiracy theory if it's not true. And as it turns out, my fears are now confirmed. We are in the 1930s and we haven't seen the worst yet. So I want to explain to you what I mean by that. I think I've identified 6 signs, 6 key signs revealing that we are in a 21st century version of the 1930s. When we remember how that previous era ended for 6 million Jews, it should bring chills down our spine, and it should really motivate people of goodwill in general, and Bible-believing Christians in particular, to expose the lies and fight for the truth. The sad reality is that this time, not just the Jews are the target, but Christians as well. This being said, and as history has always shown, the Jews are the first to be targeted. They're the first ones to go. And they are persecuted the most. There is a reason why anti-Semitism is often called the longest hatred. Now, let me help you identify the six signs. The first one, I think, is, I would call it demonization. Often the first step in separating a people group from the rest of society is to make people believe that they are different in some sort of a negative and even dangerous way. This has been the stigma attached to my people for much of our history. From the biblical record, to the early church fathers, to the medieval lords during the Middle Ages, to the Reformation, to the Holocaust. Yet, it did not really stop because anti-Semitism never stops. Anti-Semitism is on a continuum that constantly reinvents itself to better attract more people towards hating the Jews. The demonization of the Jews is nothing new. We have been accused of crucifying Messiah from the day of the crucifixion to this day, and it continues. A false accusation that can easily be debunked, starting with the Bible in the Gospel of John, chapter 10, verse 14 through 18, where Yeshua speaks of his own death as a necessary part of God's plan, and how he gave his own life for all, for you and for me, for all, and was able to take it back at his resurrection. Additionally, we have been called, the Jews, we have been called so many things, from criminals to wild beasts to poisoners of wells to usurers to little devils to vermin and subhuman. The last 2 names, vermin and subhuman, were part of Nazi propaganda to dehumanize the Jews and facilitate their demonization. Vermin needs to be exterminated for the safety of people. Thus, the Holocaust was thought of, justified, organized, and 6 million times successful. But what about today, you say? I mean, how can you say that things like this are happening today? Are Jews still being demonized? You tell me. We are called the new Nazis of the Middle East, colonizers, occupiers, guilty of ethnic cleansing. The old anti-Semitism was going after the Jews in the diaspora, and the new anti-Semitism is going after them as well as Israelis and the land of Israel as well. At the 2018 convention of the Islamic Society of North America, American Palestinian activist Linda Sarsour said, and I quote, "If you're on the side of the oppressor," and she means Israelis and Jews, "if you're on the side of the oppressor, or you're defending the oppressor, or you're actually trying to humanize the oppressor, then there is a problem, sisters and brothers, and we got to be able to say that is not the position of the Muslim American community." Close quote. I don't know about you, but when someone tells me that I am trying to humanize someone else, it must mean that they believe that someone else is not human. If the Jews are not human, they become irrelevant. They become irrelevant to our society. And demonization is ever so easier and easy to commit. Linda Sarsour, by the way, is closely connected to every member of the squad. So that's number one, demonization. Number two, boycott, divestment, and sanctions, or BDS, as it's called. The BDS movement has officially been going for 16 years now. It was started by two men, one of whom we all know well, Mahmoud Abbas, the current leader of the Palestinian Authority, and the other one, a little less known, Omar Barghouti, who's from Qatar, who incidentally received the Gandhi Peace Award in 2017 for his efforts towards peace in the Middle East. Really? Wow. Now, boycott in and of itself is not bad. It all depends on who or what one is boycotting, the reasons they do so, and of course, the integrity of their boycott. Abbas and Barghouti did not invent the boycott of Jewish people, products, or inventions. They simply revived an age-old practice that was used in the 1930s. Not long after coming into power, the Nazi leadership started to boycott Jewish businesses and Jewish professionals. As a matter of fact, on April 1st, 1933, they decided to station stormtroopers in front of Jewish stores and paint yellow stars of David on storefront windows. The boycott officially lasted one day, only one day, and many Germans ignored it. Nevertheless, it was the start of a campaign of ostracization that would lead to more boycotts and confiscation of Jewish property. The modern BDS movement relies on the ignorance of those it targets as recruits. Being in the entertainment industry, the political scene, or academia, or even various Christian denominations, BDS influences people who have blindly bought the Palestinian victimhood narrative. The very fact that Omar Barghouti received the Gandhi Peace Award in 2017 for peace efforts shows the hypocrisy and lack of understanding of the facts in the Middle East. It is so sad to see so many people infatuated with a false narrative cloaked in the attractive garment of social justice. The BDS movement continues to tighten its grip on Israel and Jewish products, inventions, and people, with much hypocrisy, I should say, as they only boycott what is convenient to them. And all that is financed by liberals like George Soros, who's pouring a lot of effort, a lot of money into this. Number 3, pogroms. What are pogroms? Well, looking at when this started, the first pogroms occurred in Eastern Europe in the mid to late 1800s. They mostly occurred within what was known then as the Pale of Settlement. The Pale, which lasted from 1791 to 1913, included about 20% of European Russia and much of present-day Lithuania, Belarus, Poland, Moldova, Ukraine, and part of Western Russia, for a total of about 1 million square miles. That's a huge geographical ghetto, so to speak. About 90% of Russian Jews lived inside the Pale, growing from 1.6 million in 1820 to 5.6 million in 1910. Life was very difficult, and additionally, the pogroms, which is a Russian word for devastation, of the 1870s through the 1910s created a very hostile environment that exacerbated the miserable conditions in which the Jews lived. The first pogrom on record might have been as early as 1821 in Odessa in Ukraine. The official reason given for the hundreds of subsequent pogroms was the assassination of Alexander II in 1880, for which some blamed the Jews. Who else? Always the Jews. Pogroms became government-sponsored riots against the Jews. That's how you can describe them. Government-sponsored riots against the Jews, as they claimed the lives of many in the little Jewish shtetls or hamlets of the Pale of Settlement. They included looting, rape, and murder. If you have seen the movie Fiddler on the Roof, you know what pogroms are all about. Now, while today's pogrom might not be government-sponsored, they're ignored by the authorities. To be sure, we're not seeing major destruction of Jewish property and lives like we've seen in the 19th century. Of course not. But today's new anti-Semitism is expressed in ways that come very close, and they're all going to get even closer, I believe. Consider the destructive attack on Jewish neighborhoods in conjunction with the murder of George Floyd. Jewish businesses were attacked and looted in the Fairfax area of Los Angeles, where many Jews live and have their own businesses. Graffiti such as Free Palestine or F the Jews were spray painted on walls. By the way, what does this have to do with George Floyd? It escapes me. I have no idea how you can connect the two. Number 4, blood libels and other accusations. Well, the world is still trying to recover from the pandemic that changed everything. To some people, the Jews are to blame for the virus. Can you believe it? Absolutely. This is nothing new for us, for the Jewish people. But it's more of a repeat of what took place in the 14th century in Europe. By the mid-1300s, with the advent of the Black Death or Black Plague, the legend of poisoning of the whales of Europe had found a fertile ground. And who was guilty of it? Of course, you guessed it, the Jews. It was the most devastating pandemic in the history of mankind, responsible for the death of about 75 million people worldwide, 25 million in Europe alone, from 1347 to 1350. Just about 4 years. It was 4 years of horror for the Jewish communities of Europe. As the rest of the continent appeared to be on its way to total extinction, people started to look for a cause, and it was not long before the Jews were once again used as the convenient scapegoats of humanity, a recurring theme that we see through the whole history of the Jewish people. We have been the scapegoats of humanity for all the ills of the world. Jewish people also died during the Black Death, but generally in much lesser numbers. The kosher laws Jewish people followed forced them to maintain stricter hygiene and thus resulted in fewer infections and fewer deaths than the communities around them. The Jews also lived in separate communities, and the liturgical washing of hands before meals also kept them from being as sick or dying from the Black Death. However, even with these known facts and traditions, it did not stop the masses from destroying and slaughtering over 200 Jewish communities that they felt were guilty of the virus of the Black Plague. So, today and around the world, some are blaming the Jews for creating the virus, the COVID-19 virus. Why? To benefit from the sales of a vaccine, which is a combination of the accusation of poisoning the wells of Europe and the myth of the greedy Jew, all packaged into this new, the Jews created COVID-19. They come from the left, the right, and religious groups worldwide. Some even claim that the Jews are more dangerous than COVID-19 and should be eliminated. We've seen people carry signs saying Jews are the reason for COVID-19. Social media is a big culprit in allowing anti-Semitic rhetoric to go unchallenged and unpunished. More than 17,000 occurrences of the phrase Hitler was right have been found on various platforms of the social networks in the last few months. Very little has been done to stop it, if anything. Recently, a Twitter post by ex-Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, a Democrat of Georgia, resurfaced when she claimed that the Jews were also responsible for 9/11. Hey, why not? Since we are responsible for all the ills of the world, you might as well put 9/11 in there. Can you believe it? Number 5, killings. Tragically, Jew hatred rarely stops at the defacing of property or online threats. We have now entered a phase where Jews are being killed again. Now, the Holocaust was the most devastating organized genocide in the history of mankind. I'll give you that. It was also the only of its kind where Jews were brought back to their death after they fled, making it incredibly unique in all the genocides of history of mankind. While the new anti-Semitism is not claiming the lives of Jews in the same manner in comparable numbers, just the idea that Jews would be massacred again should send chills down our spine. Perhaps France, more than any other civilized country, has seen the death of Jewish people in the last decade. And to me, it's very alarming. It is definitely a sign that we are back in the 30s. This is why I believe beyond the shadow of a doubt that anti-Semitism has once again morphed into a more voracious beast, end times anti-Semitism. Now, the 2017 killing of Sarah Halimi in Paris, where she was thrown out of the window of her apartment, was one of the worst acts of anti-Semitic killing in recent years. And it's only one of several in 2012, 15, and 2018. To add insult to injury, her killer was allowed to walk free without a trial because he had been found high on cannabis and deemed not responsible of his actions. Really? This sets a precedent for the killing of Jews in France, and this should also be a wake-up call for all French Jews. France is no longer a safe place for the Jews. Let's also not forget the Pittsburgh synagogue in the USA, the massacre of that synagogue, and the one in San Diego. Jews worldwide now live in constant fear for their lives. It's becoming dangerous to go outside with a yarmulke on your head. Really, you take your life in your own hands, or a Star of David around your neck. They used to be potential targets for verbal abuse, but the abuse is not turning physical. It is not only on the streets that Jews are at risk. Just days ago, a bullet was fired at the window of a Brooklyn synagogue. Nobody was hurt, but somebody just fired a bullet at the window of the synagogue. Why? Because it was a synagogue, and they thought maybe there would be Jewish people meeting there. Number 6, apathy. As if all these signs weren't enough to sound the alarm, there's one more aspect that must be brought up, and that is the apathy of the general public. For the most part, people do not care about Jewish people being the victims of anti-Semitism. If they are not affected, they move on. This tragically is reminiscent of the Holocaust era, when many looked the other way when trains overfilled with Jews passed through their towns. Even worse, as pastor and author Erwin Lutzer documents in his great book, When a Nation Forgets God. The story he heard from an eyewitness telling him how people would sing louder in church when they heard trains go through packed with Jews in cattle cars. And he documents that in his book. And I quote this person who lived during that era, who's still alive. And this person said, and I quote, "I lived in Germany during the Nazi Holocaust. I considered myself a Christian. We heard stories of what was happening to Jews, but we tried to distance ourselves from it, because what could we do to stop it? A railroad track ran behind our small church, and each Sunday morning we could hear the whistle in the distance, and then the wheels coming over the tracks. We became disturbed when we heard the cries coming from the train as it passed by. We realized that it was carrying Jews like cattle in the cars. Week after week, the whistle would blow. We dreaded to hear the sound of those wheels, because we knew that we would hear the cries of the Jews en route to a death camp. Their screams tormented us. We knew the time the train was coming, and when we heard the whistle blow, we began singing hymns. By the time the train came past our church, we were singing at the top of our voices. If we heard the screams, we sang more loudly, and soon we heard them no more." What a tragic story, a legacy of what my Jewish people think of Christians because of things like this. The apathy of yesteryear is still contagious today. I'm not surprised when people who do not believe in God act selfishly, but I'm disgusted when people who call themselves Christians either denigrate the Jewish people or reenact the Holocaust era scenario, ignoring the tragedy befalling my people today. The bystanders of the 1930s and 1940s are part of history. And please, do not go trying to cancel that, okay? But my disgust is with the bystanders of today. The apathy within and without the church is a clear sign that the Jews have very few friends who will come to their rescue in time of need. Incidentally, American Jews being oblivious to the signs, these signs, is another mystery to me. How much do my people need to go through to accept the fact that we are back in the 1930s and 1940s? Hey, would you subscribe to my channel? If you're learning from my postings, would you please subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell? And of course, if you give me a thumbs up, it's even better. I'm counting on you. Thanks.